It had been 30 winters since Hollis had last heard a human voice. The mountains didn't ask questions, and he'd long since stopped answering them. Every creak of the trees, every howl of the wind across the ridge, those were the only sounds he let inside. He'd built the cabin with his own hands, logs dragged up by mule, firewood split one sorrow at a time. After Ruth passed, there'd been no reason left to speak, and even less to hope. So he spoke to no one, not even himself. That morning, the wind didn't just bite, it screamed. Snow blew sideways, not falling but attacking. The trees groaned like they might snap in half. Hollis kept the fire low and stayed in his chair by the window, blanket over his knees, shotgun across his lap. He had no reason to believe today would be any different. He hadn't seen another person in 3 decades, and that suited him just fine. So when a knock came, soft, measured, not wind, not accident, he didn't believe it first. He didn't move. The sound came again. Hollow thumps, knuckles against wood. He slowly turned his head. He waited. Another knock. This time, there was a rhythm to it. Deliberate. Human. He stood slowly. His knees ached with age and stillness. His hand reached for the shotgun out of habit, but he didn't cock it. Just held it. When he opened the door, the cold slammed into him, brutal and sharp. But it wasn't the cold that made him forget to breathe. 10 women stood in the snow. Their blankets were soaked through, ice in their hair, skin gray from exposure. One of them, standing in front, was barefoot. She held something close under her blanket. It could have been a child, or a wound. Hollis stared. None of them spoke at first. Then the barefoot one said something in a language he didn't understand. Apache, maybe. Her voice shook like dry leaves. He didn't need to understand the words. He saw it in their eyes. Hunger, fear, desperation. He stepped aside. They entered without looking up one by one, eyes hollow, bodies trembling. Some limped. One woman helped another walk. The youngest looked no older than 15. The oldest might have been his age. He shut the door behind them, and for the first time in 30 winters, his silence cracked. He knelt by the fire, feeding at pine logs until the flames jumped high. He moved slow. No sudden gestures. No questions. He handed the youngest a tin cup of boiled water. Her fingers trembled so much she nearly spilled it. Still, no one said a word. The sound of the fire filled the room like breath. They huddled near the hearth, steaming blankets around them, but their silence held. Hollis gave up his bed without a word and took his shotgun to the corner near the door. Not because he feared them, but because something had sent them here through snow and starvation, without men, without food, without weapons. That's what he feared. In the quiet, he studied them. They carried silence like it was all they'd been taught to hold. Even among themselves, they didn't speak. The barefoot woman, he noticed now her toes were black with frostbite, clutched her hidden bundle tighter. Her eyes darted toward him, unsure. He rummaged through an old chest, pulled out wool socks and a tin of ointment Ruth had once made. When he brought it toward her, she flinched. Not out of fear, out of protection. Then he understood. It wasn't a wound. It was a baby, wrapped tight, unmoving, not even a cry. He said nothing, just nodded, set the salve by the fire, and stepped back. She stared at it for a long time. That night, she used it, rubbed it on her swollen feet. He didn't watch, just listened to the soft rustle of blankets and the faint sound of boiling water. By morning, the storm still raged. Hollis stoked the fire again and passed around bread, what little was left. The barefoot woman finally spoke. She pointed to herself and said, "Hosa." Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. He pointed to his own chest. "Hollis." A few of the others looked up then, faces still hollow, but a shift, like the air itself had remembered how to be shared. Later that day, he cleaned out the back room where old tools had gathered dust for years, cleared space, hung blankets for privacy, brought in extra coats. He didn't ask how long they'd stay. He didn't ask anything at all. He just kept moving, kept feeding the fire. On the 4th day, one of them spoke. She had a scar running from her jaw to her neck. Her voice was rough, but clear. Alawa. That was her name. Her English was jagged, like broken glass, but the meaning came through. Soldiers. Fire. Screams. Their village gone. The survivors ran. No weapons, no men, no help. Just silence, snow, and sisters. 3 had died in the cold, buried in rocks. No time to cry. And now here, she said quietly. Now we knock. Hollis said nothing, just stood, then went outside and slaughtered goat. Made stew, fed them until their hands stopped shaking. That night, he sat with his Bible again for the first time in years. He didn't read, just flipped the pages. The sound was enough. One of the girls, maybe 16, sat beside him. Watched the pages move. She touched the leather cover. Safe, she said. He didn't know if she meant the book, the cabin, or him. But the word stayed in his chest long after she returned to her place by the fire. The snow didn't stop for 5 more days. Thick white sheets kept falling, quiet but heavy, covering the trees, the roof, even the path to the smokehouse. Hollis moved slow through the cold, checking on the goats, breaking ice at the well, chopping what was left in the shed. Inside, the women stayed close to the fire. They spoke more now, soft words to each other in Apache. Sometimes laughter, sometimes silence again. He didn't ask questions. He just watched and listened. Hosa's baby still didn't cry. That worried him. He remembered Ruth saying babies should cry. It meant they had life in them. The little one's skin was pale, lips dry, body too still. Hollis boiled more water, crushed pine needles, made a steam tent like Ruth used to do when someone had fever. Hosa watched him the whole time, her hands wrapped around her child, her eyes full of fear, but also something else, trust. By the 6th day, the baby made a sound, just a soft whimper, then another, then a cry. Hosa wept. She didn't try to hide it. The women gathered close, some smiling, one even sang something low and sweet. It felt like a turning point, like winter might not win. Hollis built a better stove using old iron pieces. One of the women, Alawa, helped him patch the chimney. She didn't speak much while they worked, but once, when the hammer slipped and scraped his hand, she reached for the cloth and wrapped it without a word. He nodded. She nodded back. That was enough. The women began to do more around the cabin. The older ones baked flatbread using dry oats and goat milk. The younger ones helped chop wood, learn how to boil water, how to mend socks. Hosa started smiling more. Her baby, named Nanton, slept better. There was even laughter now, soft and sudden, but real. Then the tracks appeared. At first, just boot prints near the edge of the trees. Then horse prints. 2 days in a row. Hollis didn't like that. The ridge was hard to reach. No one came without a reason. And those kinds of prints, he knew the type of men who made them. The kind who didn't care about peace. The kind who wanted control. He didn't sleep that night. Sat on the porch with the shotgun across his lap, eyes on the trees. Around midnight, Hosa came out, baby in her arms, wrapped tight. Something's wrong? She asked. He nodded. Someone's watching. She didn't ask who. Maybe she already knew. The wind was quieter now, but it carried a strange feeling, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Hollis had lived with the mountain long enough to understand that silence. It meant danger. The next morning, the tracks were closer, right up to the smokehouse, then gone, like someone had come to look, then left. He called Alawa and Hosa outside, showed them the prints. We got eyes on us, he said. Might come back. They didn't panic. Alawa's jaw tightened. Hosa held Nanton tighter. But no one ran. We stand, Alawa said, or we vanish. He nodded. Then we prepare. He checked every window, reinforced the shutters with old fence boards, piled logs against the outside walls, set wire snares and bells around the trees. Not for animals this time, but men. The women helped. Hosa sharpened kitchen knives. Alawa kept the younger ones focused. They filled every barrel and pot with water in case the well was hit. They weren't soldiers, but they weren't helpless either. They had each other. That counted for something. That night, no one slept. They took turns watching the trees. Hollis sat by the door, shotgun on his knees. The fire burned low. His eyes closed for only a second, but in that second he saw something, a dream, maybe, or a warning. Boots in snow, flames rising, shadows moving. He woke with a start. Smoke, not from the chimney. He rushed outside. The smokehouse was on fire. Flames licked the roof, snapping in the wind. The meat, all of it gone. Days of work. But that wasn't the worst of it. 3 riders stood at the edge of the clearing, silent, watching. One raised his hand like a wave, then turned and rode away. They never spoke, never got closer, just sent their message. We see you. We'll be back. Alawa cursed in Apache. Hosa had tears in her eyes, but not from fear, from anger. This won't stop, Hollis said. They're testing us. Alawa drew a breath. Then let them test. We're ready. He hoped that was true, but deep down he knew the truth. 10 women, 1 old man, a baby, no law, no help, just them. Still, he'd stood his ground before. He'd do it again. He taught the women how to reload the shotgun. Let them feel its weight. He handed Hosa a revolver. Only if you have to, he said, but if you do, don't miss. She nodded. That night, the fire burned steady, but no one slept. And in the dark, a child began to cry. The baby wouldn't stop crying. Not Nanton, another one. The sound came from outside. Hosa opened the door before anyone could stop her. There, lying on the cold wooden step, was a bundle wrapped in rabbit fur. Hollis stepped closer and saw a newborn inside. A girl, quiet now, eyes closed, skin still warm, clean, cared for, left gently. Beside her, a white feather. Everyone gathered around. No one spoke. They knew what it meant. A message. You've killed one of ours, but you saved one too. You're being watched. Hollis lifted the baby into his arms. She didn't stir, just breathed slow and soft, like she belonged here. What do we do? Hosa whispered. We name her, Hollis said, and we raise her. Same as the others. No one argued. They didn't need to. By nightfall, they were boiling goat's milk and feeding her with a spoon. Nanton calmed down when the new baby lay beside him, as if he knew her already. They named her Alisai. 3 nights passed with no tracks, no arrows, no riders. Hollis didn't feel peace. He felt something worse. Stillness. The kind that comes before storm. He knew it too well. That's what scared him. On the 4th night, voices came. Not loud. Not in English. Not Apache either, but close. Laughter. Soft steps. Moving around the cabin. He went to the window and saw figures. Dozens. Torches. Spears. And in the center, a man on horseback in a white fur coat. His face was painted red and black. Hollis had seen him once before. Years ago. A war chief. Ruthless. Exiled. Now he was back. And he had an army. The torches disappeared by morning. No one saw where they went. But the snow outside was smooth. No footprints. That was worse. The kind of warriors who erased their own tracks. Those were the ones you feared. They're circling, Hollis said. Watching. The women tensed. Oh, I didn't speak. Hosa's hands tightened around Alisai. No one cried. They just waited. That afternoon, Tyanida found something while folding blankets near the fire. A feather. Smooth. Black. Silver at the tip. Not from any bird they knew. Not from this side of the mountain. Hollis stared at it, then threw it into the fire. That night, they stayed close to the flames. They sang soft hymns mixed with Apache lullabies. The babies slept in a basket lined with fur. Peace for a moment. Until the scream. It tore through the snow like a knife. A woman's voice. From outside. High and panicked. Help me. Everyone froze. Another scream. Closer. Please, someone. Hollis stood fast. Rifle in hand. He knew what it was. A trap. Hosa ran for the door. That's a woman out there. No, Hollis said, grabbing her arm. They want to pull us out. Tears filled her eyes. But what if it's real? The scream came again, sharp, broken. We decide now, Alawa said. I go alone, Hollis said. No one follows. He didn't wait. He stepped into the snow, heart pounding. Each step felt like a warning. At the tree line, he saw her, a young woman, barefoot, bleeding, crying. Clothes torn. They're coming, she gasped. Please. Then an arrow hit the tree beside his head. He pulled her down behind a rock. Another arrow struck the ground. A third skipped off stone. He didn't fire. Not yet. He saw a shadow moving on the ridge. Counted 3 breaths. Then fired once. A body fell. When he reached it, he froze. It was a boy, not older than 14. Another figure ran to the body. Hollis didn't shoot. He dragged the wounded woman back to the cabin. Blood soaked her dress. The women pulled her inside. Hosa tore cloth for bandages. Alawa stoked the fire higher. Her name is Kaya, Alawa said. She ran from someone. Or something worse, Hollis muttered. Kaya only whispered one word before going quiet. Brothers. She died 2 hours later. Hollis buried her beside the burned-out smokehouse. Alone. No prayers. Just the thud of his shovel. The cabin stayed dark that night. No one lit a fire. No one spoke. But something had changed. The next morning, another sound. A baby crying. Not Nanton. Not Alisai. They rushed to the door. Another bundle. Another child. A boy this time. Older. 6 maybe. Barefoot. Shivering. Lips blue. In his small hands, a blood-soaked rag. Hollis carried him inside. Tyanida wrapped him in a coat. His back was covered in welts. Lashes. Not punishment. A message. The boy didn't cry. He didn't speak. Just watched them with wide eyes. Hollow. That night, Hollis dreamed of fire again. Smoke, screams, the cabin burning, men shouting, the war chief standing in the flames. He woke in a sweat. Alisai had a fever. Her skin burned. They were out of water. Out of bark. Only the river had what they needed. 2 miles away. Through enemy ground. I'll go, Hollis said. No, Alawa warned. It's suicide. No one else knows the signs, he said. He packed his rifle and rope. Slipped into the dark before dawn. The stars watched him go. Every step was risk. Every shadow a trap. At the river, he filled the flask, dug for willow bark. A branch snapped behind him. 3 warriors stepped out. Painted faces. Spears raised. He raised his hands. Spoke the old words. Words of respect. They watched him. One step forward, dropped a bundle. Dried roots. Herbs. A small carve rattle. For the baby, one said in English. Then they vanished. Back at the cabin, they boiled the herbs. Washed her skin. Her fever broke. She slept easy that night. What changed? Alawa asked. Hollis didn't know how to explain. Not all enemies want war. Some just want to see what kind of man you are. The next morning, the boy finally spoke. One word. Kyun. Then he pointed to Alisai. Sister. That evening, Hollis called everyone to the hearth. The fire was soft and steady. He laid out maps on the floor. Old ones, corners torn, dirt smudged into the lines. Trails, valleys, river paths. He traced them with his finger. We may need to leave, he said. The room went quiet. Leave? They had rebuilt so much. The smokehouse, the roof, the well. The cellar was full again. The babies were stronger. This place had started to feel like home. You mean run? Hosa asked, voice low. I mean survive, Hollis answered. But not everyone agreed. Alawa sat up straighter. We've run enough. From soldiers. From fire. From our own people. No more. I'm not asking you to run, Hollis said. I'm asking you to outlive them. He looked at the fire, not at them. He didn't want to leave either. He had carved this place from silence and loss. Ruth's memory was in every beam. But the war chief wouldn't stop. And now with Kyun, Alisai, and Nanton, they had more to lose than before. Just think about it, he said finally, folding the maps away. That afternoon, the sun broke through for the first time in weeks. Snow melted in small, quiet drips. Hollis took it as a gift, a short chance to get ready. They watched in pairs, one always near the children. Hollis reset the traps, this time not just with bells, but with tin cans, glass pieces, anything that could make noise. The forest was too quiet now, too still. That night, torches returned. Not close, but on the ridge, high above. A line of flames. A wall in the dark. They're showing numbers, Hollis said. Dozens. Maybe more. He didn't need a count. He already knew they were outmatched. Then, Tyanida came running. She'd been patrolling near the brook. The sound, she said breathless. A child. They followed her through snowdrifts and bare trees, behind the boulders near the deep ridge. There, curled under a branch, was a boy. 6 years old. Maybe less. Buckskin shirt. No shoes. Shivering so hard he couldn't speak. Tyanida knelt and whispered in Apache. The boy didn't answer, just held out something in his tiny hand, a rag soaked in blood. She wrapped him in her own coat and carried him back. Hollis met them at the door. The boy didn't speak that night, not a single word. But Hollis saw the scars, the lashes, deep, Ugly. Not punishment. A warning. Someone had done this to scare them. Not just to scare the boy. To send a message. Inside, they fed him broth. Let him sleep. Kuhn sat nearby, watching. Silent. Protective. That night, Hollis didn't dream of Ruth. He dreamed of fire again. But this time, the fire didn't come from the outside. It started inside the cabin. Smoke everywhere. Screams. Steel flashing in the dark. The war chief, standing in the flames, laughing. He woke to the sound of Apache crying. Her skin was red. She burned again. "We're out of water," Hosa said, panicked. Out of bark. No one spoke. The river was too far. The path too dangerous. "I'll go," Hollis said again. "No," Alawa said. "You've done enough. No one else knows the signs." Hosa stepped forward. "Then I go." "You have 2 children to protect," Hollis said. "Let me go." He packed fast. Canteen, rifle, rope, left before anyone could argue. The path to the river was darker than before. More shadows, more eyes. He reached the bank and dug, filled the flask, pulled bark from trees. Then a sound. 3 Apache warriors again. He didn't move. He spoke the words of peace. Not perfect, but honest. One stepped forward, dropped another bundle, roots, herbs, a carved rattle. "For the baby," one said. Then they left. He stood there, unsure if it was help or a warning. But he brought the herbs back. They boiled it. Let the steam cover Apache. Her breathing calmed. Her fever faded. "She's better," Hosa whispered. "She's better." Kuhn sat beside her all night. He didn't sleep. Just watched her. The next morning, snow had covered the ridge again. Everything looked quiet. But it wasn't. Hollis stepped out. Fresh tracks in the snow. A half circle around the cabin. Not just 1 or 2. A pattern. Watching. Measuring. He didn't speak. Just poured water in the kettle. Alawa saw in his eyes. They came again. He nodded. Hosa spoke what no one wanted to say. "Are they waiting for something?" "Waiting for us to run," he said. No one replied. That afternoon, Tyanida found another feather in the firewood pile. This one black again. Long, sharp. "They're close," Hollis said. And they were. That night, the torches on the ridge burned brighter. Closer. The babies slept in the corner. The women sat in silence. Then a noise from outside. One rider. Alone. Draped in black fur. The war chief. Hollis stepped out. Rifle on his back. Hands empty. "You shelter traitors," the chief said in broken English. "They return with me." "They'd rather die," Hollis said. The chief didn't blink. "That is allowed." Hollis took one step closer. "You'll have to kill me first." "That too is allowed," the chief said. Then he turned and disappeared into the dark. That night, the wind howled. And inside the cabin, no one slept. But no one ran either. They had chosen to stand. Snow fell hard that night, thick and fast, hiding everything. Trees, trails, even fear. Then came the war cries. No warning, no sound before it. Just sudden screams from the trees. They attacked like shadows, fast, silent, everywhere. Emmett fired the first shot. Then Hollis. Then the women moved, smooth and sure, just like they practiced. They carried the children to the root cellar while the men held the door. Hollis didn't flinch, didn't blink. He aimed and fired, then fired again. One man rushed in through the window. Alawa caught him with a knife straight to the throat. Another grabbed Hosa, but she swung a thick log, cracked his skull clean. The rest pulled back. Screams echoed. Snow turned red. Fire crackled in the trees. But the cabin still stood. Hours passed. Then came a different sound. A scream from the woodshed. Hollis ran. He slipped in the blood-soaked snow, slammed through the door. Inside, Emmett was down. Wounded bad. Blood everywhere. But beside him stood Kuhn, blade in his small hand. Eyes wide. Hand shaking but firm. He had saved Emmett. Outside, the cries faded. The fire dimmed. Then quiet. Real quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from being too tired to make more noise. By dawn, the torches on the ridge were gone. No more riders. No more threats. Only smoke rising from the woodshed, and a cabin that still stood, broken but whole. Inside, life moved slowly. The babies cried. The women whispered. No one dared speak too loud, like sound itself had become sacred. The snow didn't melt for days. It held the blood, the footprints, the fight. 2 walls were cracked. The root cellar was half caved in. The smokehouse gone, but everyone was alive. Emmett lay in a corner, stitched up by Hosa's steady hands. Pale, but breathing. You remember anything? Hollis asked. Emmett gave a tired smile. Should have died 3 times that night. Guess I'm still behind on my dues. The women didn't cry right away. Not until later. When the babies were asleep. When the door was locked. When the wind was gentle. That's when it came. Tyanida held Alawa's hand near the fire. Both shook, not from cold, but from everything they had survived. Hosa sat with the children in her lap. Tears ran down her cheeks, soft and silent. She had buried family before. She knew grief. But this grief, came with thankfulness. They had made it. Hollis didn't sit much that day. He moved around, fixing what he could, hammering broken boards, patching holes, resetting snares. But once he stopped, stared at a spot in the snow. One of the attackers had fallen there. A young one, maybe no older than Kuhn. Kuhn had killed to protect them, and Hollis couldn't forget that. That night, they sat together on the steps. The stars above were sharp and cold. Kuhn, Hollis said softly, you're not a killer. Kuhn didn't speak, just looked at the stars. You did what you had to, Hollis said. Kuhn blinked. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. You're a protector now, Hollis added. There's a difference. The next morning, the women gathered outside for a fire prayer. They stood in a circle. Alawa lit the flame. No English words were spoken. Only soft chants, old ones, full of meaning. Kuhn stood between them, hands folded. Even the babies were quiet. Hollis didn't join them. He stayed back. But he watched. He didn't know the language. But he understood it. Loss. Healing. Gratitude. It wasn't joy exactly. But it was peace. That night, something new. Hoofbeats. Just one. Hollis stepped onto the porch. A lone rider came through the trees. Wrapped in hides. Slow. Careful. He dismounted and raised his hands. Name's Tobias, he said. I was heading to Eden Pass. Heard trouble up here. Found some people down near Broken Needle. Looked like they were running from something they wouldn't name. Hollis didn't speak. You need help? Tobias asked. Hollis gave a small nod. We've got mouths to feed. Wounds to mend. I can lend a hand, Tobias said. Ain't good with kids. But I've got 2 legs and a spine. You believe in peace, Tobias? Hollis asked. The man nodded. I believe in fire in the hearth and food on the table. If peace comes with it, then yes. Hollis stepped aside. Then you're welcome. Tobias settled in quiet. Worked hard. No questions. By the 3rd day, he'd patched the barn roof. Set snares. Taught the kids how to whittle. Emmett grinned. He's got hands that speak louder than his mouth. Then came the blood moon. Sky turned red. Cold snapped harder than before. Hollis woke with a weight in his chest. A warning. By sunrise, another sign. A feather. Black. Broken in half. Left on the door. Alawa found it. She didn't scream. Just placed it on the table. They're close, Tobias said. Done waiting. That evening, Hollis gathered them around the fire. They'll come again, he said. Soon. They're not testing us now. They're deciding. We make our stand, said Tyanida. They'll outnumber us 5-1, Hollis said. Alawa raised her chin. So did the blizzard. We're still here. I'm not risking the children, Hollis said. We'll protect them, Hosa said quietly. But this is our home. We stay. No one argued. Not even Kuhn. He stood with the women, clutching his carved eagle. And so they began again, preparing for one last storm. They spent the next 2 days building. Hollis and Tobias dug trenches by torchlight. They sharpened sticks, tied them into spears, and planted them in the frozen ground. Wire was strung between trees. Tin cans, broken glass, anything that could make noise was hung on branches. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give warning. Inside, the women boiled tar, filled jars with oil, sharpened knives, and packed small bags in case they had to flee with the children. They didn't talk about running, but everyone prepared for it. On the 5th night, the dogs started barking. Then came the torches. Not a few, a ring of them, far off but clear, around the ridge like a noose. Hollis stepped out, rifle over his shoulder. One man stepped forward, slow and calm, cloaked in black furs. The war chief. You hide traitors, the man said, his English thick. They return with me. They're not traitors, Hollis replied. They're survivors. Same thing. What do you want? The chief pointed toward the cabin. The children, the women. They return. Or they die. They'd rather die, Hollis said. The chief didn't blink. That is allowed. Hollis took one step forward. You'll have to kill me first. That too is allowed, the chief said. He turned and disappeared into the torchlight. That night, no one slept. Every floorboard creaked under the weight of waiting. The babies were quiet. Hosa held Nanton in her lap. Alawa sharpened a blade with steady hands. Tobias sat by the door, eyes never closing. Hollis didn't speak. He watched the fire until the coals turned black. By midnight, snow started falling again, fast, thick, covering everything. Then it happened. The war cries returned. They came like ghosts, slipping through the dark, screaming through the trees. Kuhn heard them first and kicked over the lantern. The cabin went dark. Only firelight flickered. The men braced the door. The women grabbed the children. The first attacker burst through the back wall. Tobias struck him down with an axe handle. Another climbed through the broken window. Tyanida stabbed him before he touched the ground. One after another, the shadows came. But they met steel. They met fury. They met a family that refused to break. Alawa moved through the chaos like wind, knife in one hand, fire poker in the other. Hosa, baby tied to her chest, grabbed a burning stick and swung it like a sword. Kuhn stayed near the back door, holding a blade too big for his hand, but steady. Emmett, still weak, fired from the stairwell. One more step, and I swear I'll drop you, he growled at a man who froze in the doorway. They fought for hours. Then a scream came from the woodshed again. Hollis ran, slipped in the blood-covered snow. Inside, he saw Tobias down, blood on his shoulder. And beside him, again, was Kuhn, small, silent, holding the same blade. He'd saved them, again. At dawn it ended. The torches were gone. The ridge was quiet. The snow kept falling. The war chief didn't return. The ground was stained with blood. But the cabin still stood. The wind blew gentle, like it knew the battle was over. Inside, everyone was quiet, not in fear, but in relief. Emmett lay on a cot, pale, alive. Tobias sat on a stool, pressing cloth to his shoulder. Alawa, Hosa, and Tyanida cleaned the children with boiled water. Nanton giggled at Bubbles. Alisai slept deeply. They were alive. But no one danced. No one cheered. They had won, but they had changed. That night, Hollis sat beside Kuhn on the porch. You did more than most grown men ever could, he said. Kuhn didn't speak. He looked at the snow, at the empty woods. You're not a killer, Hollis whispered. You're a shield. The boy looked up. His face was hard, but his eyes were tired. You protect. That's who you are. Kuhn nodded once. Just once. The next day, the women held another fire prayer. No one spoke English. Just quiet songs. Bundles of sage. A circle of warmth and memory. Even the babies were calm. Hollis didn't step into the circle. He watched from distance, heart full. He had lived 30 winters alone. Now, there were 24 souls breathing in the same home. And then came the knock. This time soft. Not a threat. A man stood at the edge of the path. A patchwork coat, dust on his boots, mule behind him. Name's S. Tobias, he said. Heard your name down in Pine Ross. Someone asked me to bring this. He handed Hollis a plain envelope. No name. No seal. Hollis opened it. One line. More are coming. 15 maybe. Alone. Young. I remember the mountain. He stared at it. Alawa came to his side. What does it say? He handed her the letter. She read it. Looked up. Then we get ready. Tyanida stepped forward. 15? That's more than this roof can hold. Then we build, Hollis said. Tobias exhaled. That's a lot of mouths to feed. I know. Alawa placed a hand on Hollis's arm. You're not doing this alone. Hollis looked at them. The women. The children. The blood on the steps. Already freezing into ice. No, he said quietly. We do it together. That night, the hammer rang through the cold again. Stones were moved. Wood was split. The stars above the ridge didn't shine on a hidden place anymore. They shone on a home. A new beginning. For the forgotten. For the brave. For the ones no one thought would survive. Spring came early that year. The snow melted fast, leaving behind patches of soft earth and green roots pushing through the ground. The sky turned brighter. The wind, though still cold, carried the smell of pine and something sweeter, hope. Down the valley, 15 figures slowly made their way up the slope. Hollis saw them first. He had taken to walking the ridge at sunrise, not to look for danger anymore, but to be ready. And when he saw the line of small shapes moving toward the cabin, he didn't panic. He turned and walked back toward the barn. "They're coming," he said simply. Emmett dropped his hammer. Alawa didn't say a word. She just grabbed extra blankets. Hosa pulled dried meat and old biscuits from a shelf. Tyanida lifted the largest kettle and set it over the fire. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. By the time the children arrived, the fire was roaring, beds were ready, and food was waiting. None of the children were older than 11. Some walked in pairs, some alone. One boy wouldn't let go of his sister's sleeve, even while he slept. None of them cried at first. They were too tired, too empty. Hollis opened the door wide, said nothing, just nodded. "You're home." The oldest girl, maybe 10, stood in the center of the room after everyone entered. Her name, they would learn later, was Saya. She looked around, eyes blinking at the light, the warmth, the smell of bread. "This isn't what we thought," she whispered. "It's warmer." Hollis knelt to her eye level. "It's what you needed. That's enough." She stared at him a long time, then reached forward and took his hand. "Thank you." They never asked what had happened to the children. They didn't need to. You could see it on them, in the bruises, the way some flinched when a pot clanged, how others didn't speak for days. But things started to change. That night, they made soup. Beans, herbs, dried rabbit meat. The children ate fast, then slower, then started laughing. Tobias told a story about a goat who once ate his boot. One girl with no front teeth laughed so hard she spilled her bowl. No one scolded her. Alawa poured her another. By the second day, a few spoke again. Names, what they used to eat. One boy whispered that he liked drawing animals. Another said she once sang, but her voice had been taken by frost. Hosa sat with her on the stoop and hummed an old lullaby. The girl didn't join in, but Hosa smiled and kept humming anyway. "The voice doesn't disappear," she said softly. "It waits." By the third day, they helped with chores. Saya swept the floors. 2 boys carried water. One of the smallest gathered firewood and lined it up carefully outside, straight, perfect, like little soldiers. And on the 4th day, they played. It started with a snowball. Hune made it, tossed it gently at a boy's arm. The boy blinked, then made one of his own. A quiet laugh followed, then another, then more. Soon, snowballs flew through the air. Laughter echoed between the cabins. Hollis watched from the porch, arms crossed. He hadn't known how it would go. He still didn't. But something in his chest felt different. Not lighter, just more alive. That night, after the children were asleep, Hollis sat near the fire with Alawa, Emmett, and Hosa. "We need a plan," he said. "This can't be just shelter anymore. It has to be something bigger." "A school," Alawa said. "A garden," Hosa added. "A wall," Emmett muttered. They were all right. The next days were full of work, but no one called it work. Behind the barn, they cleared space for a new building. A schoolhouse. Stones were laid. Logs split. Even the children helped, tying sticks and carrying buckets of water. Hune painted a sign for the entrance. He couldn't write more than his name, so he just painted stars. "We need books," Saya said one morning, "and chalk, and blankets for benches." "We'll get them," Hollis promised. He didn't know how, but he meant it. The weather warmed. The streams returned. Rabbits bred. Birds sang. Tobias, who had once planned to stay for only a week, now taught the boys how to fish and carve. "They all need a trade," he said. "Ain't raising lazy bones." The children walked straighter now, slept longer, laughed louder. They knew this was theirs. One evening, Hollis stood on the ridge. Below him, 3 cabins under construction, a barn, a schoolhouse half finished, and dozens of small voices singing near the fire. Alawa stood beside him. "You're thinking of Ruth," she said gently. "Sometimes," he said. "I think she saw this before I did. She gave you time to catch up. She would have loved this place." Alawa didn't speak. She just rested her hand on his shoulder. The sky turned orange. Smoke rose gently from the hearth. That night, the oldest boy, Nanton, now nearly 12, came to Hollis. "I want to take watch with you," he said. "I know how to load a rifle. I want to protect them." Hollis nodded. "We take turns here," he said. "And you've earned yours." Nanton grinned. Not like a boy, like someone who finally felt chosen. Later, in the dark, Hollis whispered a prayer. Not for safety, not for strength, just thanks. He hadn't asked for this life, but it had come anyway, and he was no longer alone in it. The final snowfall melted slow and quiet. Beneath it, not ruin but roots. Life had taken hold. The mountain didn't forget the pain, the blood, the hunger, but it had chosen to let something grow from it. Hollis walked the ridge each morning, not out of habit now, but peace. He carried a cane carved by one of the girls, and when the sun rose, it warmed his face like a quiet welcome. Children ran between the cabins, chasing chickens, racing the goats, laughing so freely it felt like music. The schoolhouse echoed with voices learning to read, to count, to dream. Tassie, once the tiniest, now wore her red ribbons every day and taught the little ones their letters under that same roof where she'd once cried herself to sleep. Kuhn had grown into his name, not just a boy anymore. A teacher, a hunter, a guide. He taught the younger ones how to track, how to listen to the woods, how to protect. Weddings had come. Babies, too. Not Hollis's, but his heart made space for all of them. He held each new child like a promise, knowing it meant the mountain had said yes again. Not to war, but to family. Then one day, Tobias returned, older, slower, white hair under his hat, his fiddle still strapped to his back. "Word is the mountain grew a town," he said with a grin. Hollis just smiled. "Not a town." "No," Tobias asked. Hollis shook his head. "Family." They sat under the same old pine tree, the one where the first grave lay, the one where the first baby had been found. They looked down at what they'd built, cabins, gardens, a small bridge over the stream, a barn filled with life, and laughter pouring from every wall like sunlight. And then, just as the air turned warm again, a stranger arrived. Not angry, not afraid, just curious. His name was Bertram Klein, a man from the territorial office. He carried papers, wore a long coat, and boots too clean for mountain trails. "I've heard stories," he said, "of a man living up here, raising children without record, building homes without permission." Hollis didn't deny it. "We're building a life," he said. "That's not always how it's seen." Bertram stayed 2 days. He saw the school, sat through a lesson, ate bread from the kitchen, watched children reading under a pine tree while chickens clucked nearby. He saw a 12-year-old boy mend a fence without being told. He saw women leading, men following with quiet respect. No one asked for anything. They just kept going. When Bertram finally left, he said one thing. "This isn't a village," he said, "and it's not on any map." He paused, looked around. "But maybe that's exactly why it works." He folded his papers. "I'm not filing anything." And then he looked at Hollis. "If you ever need help fixing a roof," he said, "I hammer a straight nail." Then he walked down the trail, coat flapping in the breeze. That night, they celebrated. Not with speeches, with music. Tobias played his fiddle. The children danced. The ribbons flew in the firelight. Hosa and Alawa laughed like girls again. Even Hollis, old quiet Hollis, was pulled into a slow circle, his cane forgotten, his feet shuffling over dirt and memory. Later that week, the children painted pine cones and hung them from trees. For luck, they said, so no one takes this place away. No one had told them that was a risk, but they'd live enough to know that homes could be stolen. So Hollis helped, dipped his hands in paint, rolled a cone in red and gold. "We'll make hundreds," he said. "Enough luck to last forever." And they did. Bertram returned once more, this time with 2 quiet men and a notebook. But when they stepped into the clearing and saw what stood there, the school, the gardens, the barn, the joy, they said nothing. They just watched. "This place," Bertram said, "isn't for paper." He looked at Hollis, who stood with Tassie on his shoulders, her ribbons blowing in the wind. "It's for memory." And he walked away. That night, Hollis returned to the ridge. He sat where he used to sit in silence. But now, it wasn't quiet anymore. It was full of laughter from the cabins, full of singing, full of stories whispered in the dark. He thought of Ruth, and for the first time, he didn't feel grief. He felt thanks. She had left to make space for them, for all of them, and he had found what he never knew he was missing. The mountain had given him a second chance, not just at life, but at love. Not the kind between two people, but the kind that stretches out, surrounds you, and holds everything broken inside something whole. The lesson? You don't build a home with walls. You build it with people. And when the world turns cruel and the wind grows sharp, and you think you have nothing left to offer, open the door anyway. Sometimes, the ones knocking aren't here to take anything. They're here to give you back your heart.